Welcome back to every choice YouTube channel. Today's class we learn how to make this beautiful built up collar neckline blouse with puff sleeve and open slit at the waist area. It's a very simple tutorial and it's really beautiful, as we have seen. If this is something you would like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so for this tutorial I have my bodies already. This is my back bodies and this is my front bodies. So I'm sure by now we know how to draft our basic bodies, but if you don't know, I have a detailed tutorial on that already on the channel, so you may want to check that out. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to work on my neckline. Like I said, this is a built up neckline, so depending on how high you want your neckline to be, for this it's not so high, so you can work with 1 inch, 2 inches or 2.5 inches if you want it really high, but this is not too high, so I'm just going to leave it at 1 inch or 1.25. okay, so if I'm working with 1.25 inches from where my neck line stops here, that's my neck point, I'm going to place my tape measure and then measure 1.25 inches upwards like this. Then I'm going to make that into a straight line. So I'm going to square that all the way to my center back. So to make it straight, I'm just going to repeat the same measurement there, and then I'm going to connect it as shown. So I'll connect my zipper allowance as well. So this is my neckline and all of this is my allowance for my zipper. Okay, so now the next thing is to create a neckline for that, for the back. So now for the back neckline, for the back neckline curve, I'm just going to go downwards by 1/2 inch, and then on that point I'm going to connect it to form my back neck curve. Okay, and again I'm going to draft that into my zipper allowance. Okay, so now my neckline now is from here all the way to my shoulder point here. Okay, so now because this neckline, if you check your shoulder, is not so sharp, it's not exactly V like this, so for you to have this smooth curve, you can just go outwards by like 1/4 inch and then smoothing it out. But I'm just going to use my free hand to create like a curve there so that I can have something smooth and then blend it all the way like this. So this is all I'm going to do for my back neckline. So now the next thing now is to move to the front neckline as well, and then we're going to modify it. So now remember, this is our new shoulder point. Our shoulder point was from here to here earlier, but now we now have it from here all the way to this point. So now I'm just going to measure what I have there as my new shoulder point, and that is what I'm going to work with for my front. So now I have 5.5 inches, so you may want to write that somewhere. So now we'll move straight to the front. There are still some modification we want to do here, but I want us to treat the front and back neckline first before we go ahead and do the rest. Okay, so for the front neckline, this is my shoulder point, this is my armhole. So the first thing I have a neck width of 3 inches as well, just like I have for the back. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to continue my shoulder slope so that I can remember our back shoulder now is higher. We had around 4 inches here, now we have around 5.5 inches. So to accommodate that, I'm just going to continue with what I have here, but just bear in mind that this is the original neck point. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure that 5.5 inches from where my shoulder point stops here. I'm going to measure my 5.5 inches, and my 5.5 inches stops exactly on this point. Okay, so now once I have that, I'm just going to go up here by like 1/4 or 1/2 inch. Okay, and then after connecting like that, I'm going to connect this to where my neckline stops using the slightly curved brush. So what I'm just doing is just blending this in, okay, so that there won't be any difference. So now you just need to check to make sure that whatever it is that you have here is still the same as you have. So it's a bit higher now, so I'm going to measure my 5.5 inches from the one upward, and it stops here. Okay, so this is what I am going with. The next thing now is to create your neck. So for the neck depth is a very small fish shaped neckline. This is our original starting point. Okay, So let me just rule it. I don't want to have too many lines here so that it's not going to be confusing, but this is where our origins was. This is where we start measuring from before we folded this in. So from that point, okay, let me just put a dot there. You decide how low you want this neckline to be. So for according to what we have there, is not so low, so you can just leave it at maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches, but I'm just going to leave it at around 2 inches, not too low, not too high. And then from there, I'm going to create my V neckline from my new neck points here all the way to that point. Okay, so this is the new neckline that I'm working with for my front bodies. So like I said, there are some modifications we want to do again on these bodies after the neckline. So the first one is to shape the hem of our blouse. So to do this, on the hemline here, I'm going to go upwards here by 2.5 inches, or you can do 3 inches. Okay, so if I do 3 inches, I have 3 inches there, and then I'm going to connect that to my front like this, and then I'm going to connect that to my zipper allowance. So what I have done here, I'll also repeat for the front. The next thing now is to create our V-shaped design at the center front. So for the V-shaped design, depending on how wide you want it to be, remember this is a half scale bodies, so this is on, you'll still open it up. So if you are measuring 2 inches, it means by the time you open it up, it's going to be like 4 inches. If you are doing 3 inches, that's 6 inches. So depending on how wide you want it to be, and if you are doing 1, that's 2 inches. I'm just going to go inwards by 2 inches on my M line, and then you decide how open you want it to be. So now I want mine to be around my waistline. This is the waist measurement, this is the armhole line. So from there, I'm just going to use my ruler to just connect it. So you can make this straight, or you can make it off depending on what you want. So now we are done with drafting our front bodies. So now the next thing is just to shape the back. So to shape the back, just like I did for the front, I'm going to go upwards here by 3 inches, and then using my curved ruler again, I'm going to connect that 3 inches to my front. Okay, just to shape it like this, and then I'm going to make that into my seam allowance. So now we are done drafting this. The next thing is to cut out our patterns. So cutting the front first. The same way we cut your front is the same way you're cutting the back as well. So I just want to remove this, and then you carefully cut your neckline as well. So now it depends on what you want. This can have like a seam at the center front, so you just cut this now, and if you are joining it on the center front, you just cut this separately and then join it. But I don't think I'm going to have any seam line on my center front, which means I'm going to be cutting that part on fold. So it means that because this is a sharp V, to turn it, you may need to cut out a facing for that lower part so that you can turn it out neatly. But if you don't want to cut a facing, you can just cut it separately so that you can line them, or you turn them with bias separately. Okay, then you have like a seam line at the center front to join them back together after cutting them separately. I hope you understand that. What I was explaining is I don't want to have any seam line at my own center front, so I'm going to be cutting this part on fold. Then by the time because this is a V shape, you cannot turn it with a bias so that you're not going to ruin your V shape there. So I have gone ahead to cut it on my main fabric, and like I said, I put mine on fold, but you can also have a seam there. So what I was explaining here, I cut out a facing because, let me just remove this pin to explain it further. So if you're not going to be separating it, joining it at the center front, you may need to cut a facing for this V here that you have, because it's going to, you don't want it, you cannot use a bias, you're going to ruin the V shape that you have there. So I just cut out a facing for it now, and then I'm going to place my facing on it. So so that I can sew it correctly and get my V shape. So when I'm sewing it, I'm just going to sew a hemming glue with it, so that by the time I turn it and iron it, it's going to hem it, it's going to glue it together for me. So you just weave all these rough edges so that it can be neat. So if you don't want to do this, you can just open it at the center front and you add your seam allowance for joining back, so that I can use maybe a bias to turn this and turn this separately before you join them back together. I hope you understand that. So for this upper part also, I also went ahead to cut out a facing. Okay, exactly the way I cut for this. I cut out the facing so that I'm going to use it to turn the neckline. So that is for the front. For the back as well, I did the same thing. I cut out my main bodies, and then I also cut out a facing to turn the neckline of the back. So now I'll go ahead now and turn the neckline for both front and back. I'm going to turn the V shape for the front as well. Then I'm going to hold all of the dart. Then I'll bring it back to show us what we have. Okay, so I've gone ahead to add my facing to this. You can see that my dart line are fixed now. So now this is the facing for the front, and you can see that I sew in my hemming gum to it, so that by the time I turn it out, it's going to glue them together, so that I'm not going to be having it flipping over. You can do the same thing for your neckline as well. So I've sewn my facing to the neckline. I'll notch this and turn it and give it a good press. So this is the front, and these are the two back panels. So for the back as well, I went ahead to sew it on the neckline and also on the zipper allowance area, and then I also fixed my dart. So this is the first side of the back, this is the second side of the back. So the next thing to do now is to turn all of them out, then you iron it neatly. So after ironing it, I'm going to sew it on the shoulder. Okay, so I've gone ahead to iron them. You can see they are lying very flat now. So these are the two back pieces, and this is the front. So this is the V shape. You can see this sharp V that we have here. So that's what we want to achieve, and you can see that the hemming glue has glued them together. So this is the neckline for the front. So now I'm going to turn them on the shoulder. So that's why I said the shoulder has to be exactly the same. So now you're just going to turn it neatly by placing the front and back against each other like this. Then you flip one of the lining and then use it to wrap the rest, so that you can sew it on both sides neatly. Then after turning the shoulder, I'm going to sew it on the side by the allowance that I left, and then we're going to hem it on the hem line. So I'll do all this now and bring it back to show us what we have. Okay, so I've gone ahead to turn it on the shoulder. I can see that it is neatly turned. This is the shoulder, and then I went ahead to sew it by the side using my seam allowance. So the only modification I want to do to this, after sewing it, I noticed that the neckline is too up and I don't want it that high. I used 2 inches, so thankfully I used a facing to turn this, so it's going to make it very easy for me to adjust this. So I'm just going to go a little lower, maybe 2 inches lower, to make it 4 inches. Then I'm going to reshape the neckline. So I'm just clearing the pathway for that, and then I'm going to reshape it. So I'll just put it on fold again. So I'm going to be shaping it with together, the facing together with the main bodies, so you can pin them together so that they don't shift. And then I'm going to reshape it and then turn it out again. So I've repinned it now, and then I'm just going to eyeball it now and then reconnect it. Then I'll cut it and connect it to the neck point. So I've reshaped the neckline now, and I've gone ahead to sew it. So now the neckline is a bit deeper. You can see what I have. So this is around 4.5 inches. So when you're drafting yours, please kindly note that and make your adjustments. And also the neck width may not be as wide as 3 inches. You can use 2.5 inches if you don't want it that wide. So it depends on what you want. So now I'm going to set this aside and work on the sleeve. For the sleeve, it's a puff sleeve. So I just cut out my puff sleeve like this, and then I just shaped it in form of an A-line. I have several tutorials on that already on the channel, so you may check it out. So these are the 2 sleeves. I'm just going to hem it on the lower part here so that I can pass my elastic through it, and then I'm going to sew it around the armhole. So I'll do all of this now and then bring it back to show us what it looks like. Okay, so the sleeve is fixed now, and this is what it looks like. So you can see the built up part of the neckline. So this is just around 1 inch. If you want it longer, you just need to make it longer, and this is the neckline. So this is what 4 inches gave me. If you want yours longer, you can make it deeper than this, and this is the open part on the front area. So this is what the full view of the blouse looks like now that I've attached the pencil skirt to it. You can see how beautiful and lovely this came out. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.